A very warm welcome to the German watchmaking channel. The package that you're gonna see me open here in the background is part of something new on this channel. As you could probably already see from the title, it's called From Trash to Treasure, and the principle is quite easy. I'm going to buy defective or one-off watches from eBay, service and restore them, and then I'm going to sell them again and show you the whole process, including all the costs and maybe also the profits. I mean, let's be honest, hopefully the profits. But whatever it's gonna be, it's gonna build our budget for the next buy. And so on and so on. And in the end, we're hopefully gonna end up with a really nice watch. Well, but let's have a look what I got us into here with the first eBay shoot. It's actually two watches. One is this Dianthus dive watch, and the second one is the one that I'm gonna restore in this video here. A Tissot Seastar 7, which is in quite rough shape. But as you can see here from the eBay auction, I got them both for 32.50 €, which boils down to roughly 16-17 euros per watch, and could ultimately lead to a good profit on my side if I can get them running, looking presentable, and sell them. All of that you're going to be able to see in this video, including for how much I could in the end sell this watch, and what our budget is going to be for the next one. But as you can see here already, it's not going to be an easy ride with this one. It's a brass case that's nickel plated, probably, and the plating has worn off. The edges are rounded and heavily attacked by corrosion. The watch is actually running a bit, and the hands can be set. It definitely needs a service, that's for sure. But before I'm gonna open it up and take it apart, I still have one shout out to make. And that is, I finally cracked 1000 subscribers. And as I promised, I would give away this beautiful Omega military watch that I restored in the last video. And for that purpose, I have all the subscribers that commented in the last video in this spinning wheel, where one person will be randomly chosen. And this person is gonna be Cycling Grab. Congratulations! I'd like to ask you to send me an email to the email link to this channel with a 4-digit code that you made up, and then afterwards you reply the same 4-digit code to your original comment. This way I can make sure it's really you, and then we can work out all the details, how I'm gonna ship the watch to you, and so on. Again, congratulations, and I really hope you enjoy the watch. But let's continue with the restoration that is at hand, because it's not gonna be easy. And as you can read here, use key number 315T. Luckily enough, I own such a set of Tissot Seastar 7 case openers. Well, even though one or two might be missing, luckily the 315T was there, and you just need to put together the three parts that are needed for this crystal lifting device. And then once you have reassembled it, you can use it like basically any other crystal lift. Just putting it on top, screwing it down, and voila, you can get the crystal off. Just that with this set, you will always have exactly the right size for the crystal. Once the crystal is off, I can remove the tension ring that's underneath. Very careful, just not to scratch the dial. Meanwhile, the watch is running actually. Now, I realized that I would rather firstly remove the hands, just to be safe and not damage anything. Carefully lifting off the hands and putting them away for later. Also gonna change the lume on them. Looks quite used. And now another try with the tension ring, which I can finally get off here. And as you can see, this whole watch is a front loader, which means the movement comes out from the crystal side. But it's even nastier than that, because with this particular model, you don't have a split stem, meaning I can't take it out now. Thus, I have to remove the dial first. And for that reason, the dial of this model is just friction fit in the movement, and we do not have any dial screws. But that also means that in order to remove the stem and take out the movement, I have to disassemble the keyless works. And that seems to me pretty unique for a watch and really service unfriendly. But I mean, at least from now on, there will be a video on YouTube showing how to do it. Here I'm still fighting with the yoke spring, and then removing yoke, setting lever, and finally I'm able to remove the stem. And as I said before, it's not a split stem, but a regular one. There's also a bit of rust on it, as I saw before. But since we're here, before taking out the movement, I'll still remove the rest of the keyless, sliding and winding pinion last. And now we can have a closer look at it, seeing the movement from above. I can also see a lot of scratches. So I guess I'm not the first one in here. And now I can finally guide this movement out of the case. Having a look at it, there's actually one service mark, so you can see here, and that seems to be from 67. That means 57 years since this watch has seen a last service probably. But having a closer look, you could actually see it. After some further research, I found out that I could disassemble this case a bit more by pressing out the case back, which happened here, but you're only able to do that once you're already in the case, once the movement is already out of the case. And that is because it sits under a metal lip, which you can see here. And also the old gasket is not really a gasket anymore, so it has to be removed, which can take a lot of time, more than you think. And look at this, it's already extremely brittle. But let's turn our attention to the movement, which I firstly have to free of this movement ring, which is out of plastic. Once this ring is gone, we can remove the balance, have a look at it, seeing if the balance staff is still intact, but it looks all good, which means removing the power would be the next step on the list. Since the stem is already removed, I'm using a screwdriver to do that. And now I can move over to the pallet fork and take this out safely without any power left in the watch. And afterwards I can proceed to take apart the rest, including the ratchet wheel, and the crown wheel. Which gives me opportunity to remove the train wheel bridge. And looking at all the different wheels, checking the pivots. There's this intermediate plate here. Can be lifted off. Until I can screw off the barrel bridge, removing the click and the click spring. Very careful, because this one likes to jump. And it's not easy to find, especially on your pullover. So far, most of the parts look alright. A bit of grime here and there. Removing the cannon pinion. and the center wheel on the other side. And now moving on to the cap jewels underneath the balance. Very carefully closing it. And here I start preparing the main plate for the cleaning machine. Removing all the dirt that I can remove, especially in the keyless. And then as a last step, the cap jewel of the balance wheel, with the balance already back on the main plate, as you can see. Everything ready for the cleaning machine. Besides the mainspring, which I'm opening here, the barrel for. And that looks alright. I think I'm gonna reuse this mainspring. That's why I'll slowly get it out, clean it, and then also put it to the cleaning machine. The pre-cleaning definitely helps, keeping the fluids in the cleaning machine last just a bit longer. And here you can see why that is. Now with all the parts in the baskets in the cleaning machine, we're firstly going to Elma WF Pro, and then 2 rinses with Elma Supro Pro, where in each solution the basket will rotate for around 7 minutes and then goes to dry in this little heat tunnel. And with that done, we have all the parts clean and can start the assembly with oiling the jewels, the cap jewels that is. Here you can see it under the microscope, just how the oil suspends. And there you can see it go back to the balance wheel. Just this bubble of oil right where the pivot point is. And the same on the other side. Just a tiny drop covered by the cap. And then put back into the shock setting. What I'm doing then is giving a burst of air to the balance wheel and just now having it spin completely, and then I'm measuring the time, now sped up here, until it completely comes to a stop. And for me that should definitely exceed 30 seconds, which here it definitely does. With that test passed, I can wind the mainspring back into its barrel. Very slowly bringing it back under tension. And in this case, I just could not get this last bit in, which means that I need to improvise by pushing this standing out bit into the barrel and then pressing it on. I can fully bring back the mainspring into its housing. Proper lubrication is definitely important. And then closing it up with a lid. And there, the mainspring is reassembled. And I can continue by placing back the center wheel and the mainspring barrel onto the main plate, covering it up with a barrel bridge, and reassembling the click spring, and the click itself. Also here placing a drop of oil and cleaning up the excess. Now here, let me call it the center wheel bridge. It has 2 screws, so it's a bridge, not a cock. Screwing this down. Giving it a drop of Möbius HP1300 medium viscosity oil. And then continuing the rest of the train of wheels. Here, the very sensitive escape wheel. And here I'm carefully lowering the second wheel, the second pinion, into place. And then the train wheel bridge can find its way back into the movement. And with all the wheels perfectly aligned, we can put in the screws and secure it. I would always advise to firstly screw it down not completely tight, then test a bit. And if everything moves freely, then give the screws the final twist. Now here again some HB1300 for the mainspring barrel, securing the ratchet wheel. And I realized there were still some dirty spots, especially on the screw here. I couldn't let it be, so I tried my best to remove it. Now oiling where the crown wheel will sit. And I'm placing it again in the outer shell. A bit of HB1300 for lubrication. And then fitting those tiny screws. Cleaning up afterwards. Here a shot of the oiling of the pallet fork, where you can see nicely how the oil suspends on the jewels, slowly lowering it down into its pivot point and securing it with the pallet fork bridge. Also here the same principle, not screwing it down too tight, checking if everything is moving good, and then screwing it down. At this point I can give a bit of wind to the watch and see if the pallet fork jumps, which it does. So I'm moving over to the other side. Cannon pinion. Now sliding pinion and winding pinion are getting greased together with the stem that can finally be put back, if not for long. Setting lever, also all the important points, getting a bit of grease, not too much, and also a bit of oil. To the faster moving parts. Here the yoke is finding its way back into the movement, and also the yoke spring. And also the setting lever spring. Now that everything is back together, I can test the different functions. Here the winding works just fine. And I can start lowering the balance down into the movement. And it didn't kick up right away, but you could see that it's willing. And by securing it down and screwing it back, it started to kick up even more, even though here it stopped once. By screwing it down fully, we got it back to life. And there the amplitude really started building, and that is before oiling. So that's what I'm doing next. 9010 and HP 1300. And there we see the amplitude really building up to a healthy rate. And now I'm going to show you the result on the Timegrapher. And I'm going to regulate the watch simultaneously. So my first adjustment here is to correct the beat error. And you can see that the beat error is immediately going down. And the second adjustment is at the regulator to adjust the rate. And then again at the spring stud to get the beat error down. And here you can already see a good line forming. Now back to the regulator to get the seconds per day in an acceptable range. And we're already almost there. Just some more fine adjustments to the regulator arm. Now losing a few seconds, going back up. I'm already completely fine with the beat error. And that is actually in the end a rate where I would leave it on. So I'm checking for different positions, side position and down position. And sometimes if you have an issue with the watch in these positions, it will present itself. But here it seemed all fine. And those are our final results, which I'm really happy with, especially reusing the old mainspring. But let's move on to a completely different topic. The restoration of the case. And the process that you see here, cut together in a few video clips, actually took hours. Because I had to completely remove the old nickel plating from the entire case. And also I wanted to be really careful not to round the edges, but to restore the old form. And as you can see, we're already getting closer to it. What I'm doing now is tape off the top side in order to proceed with the polishing machine at the sides of the case, as my intention is to mirror polish the sides of the case and have a brushed finish on top of it, on the front side. And as you can see, we're getting closer to achieve exactly that look. What actually irritated me is that after all the polishing and sanding, the case actually presented itself in a silver color. And you could clearly see in the beginning that the brass was showing through the old plating. But you'll see the result after the electro cleaner, because obviously I can't leave it as it is. I have to plate it again. But in order to do so, I need to get it as clean as somehow possible. And after the ultrasonic, I'm putting it into an electro cleaner solution with a solid steel anode. Afterwards we're going into 2 rinses of distilled water, and you can already see the gold color of the case showing through. And here it is, completely cleaned. Now the case goes into a nickel plating solution with a pure nickel anode. And as you see the bubbles forming, now I'll turn on the magnetic stirring plate to knock some of these bubbles off, because they are preventing an even plating result. As you can see, I'm working with quite low voltage and current, but I'm leaving it in the solution a little bit longer, around 15 minutes. That just left me with the best results so far. And here you can finally see the color has completely changed. And I have to say that I'm really pleased with the result. What a transformation from what it looked before. And that means we can move on with the assembly. Firstly, getting this beautiful plastic movement ring back. It's not that easy actually. You just have to keep it in this position. And then with the screws tightening, it lifts into the ring. But once that's done, I can drop it back in the case. That's obviously completely dry now. Now to secure the crown, I'm placing it on a crystal in order for the second pinion not to get nailed into my bench mat, which means I can move on with the front, the dial side, at the hour wheel. I obviously cleaned the dial a bit. I can press it down into its place. And then, with adding the tension ring, secure it as good as possible onto the movement. And one more touch. There we go. And here you can see some video footage of me reluming the hands. Just carefully applying the luminescent material onto the back of the hands so that the surface tension will suspend it into the openings. And after drying for a while, I can reinstall them onto the watch, carefully pressing them down, aligning exactly at 12 o'clock, and then making sure that they are sitting flat and not touching each other. Second hand is the last one to come on. Also gets a gentle touch. And then a final check. Everything is running smoothly without collisions. But that seems to be fine. And also the dial came out beautiful, especially with the freshly loomed hands. After a final blow of air to get rid of all the dust, I have a fresh crystal here. I didn't want to reuse the old one. And using the same tool that I used to take the old crystal off, I'm bringing the new one under tension, putting it in the right place, and then unscrewing the crystal lift, which then suspends the crystal into its place. And it really worked quite good without scratches, and the crystal is sitting nice and flat. But there's one more thing that I want to do. Even though the old crown is original to the case, I felt it just wouldn't fit to the brand new polished case now. So I decided to exchange it with a generic silver crown. I was also playing with the thought of getting a new original Tissot crown, but this would lay around 20 euros, and for a watch that I paid around 17 euros for, I thought a 20 euro crown would probably not be the right investment, especially if I want to sell it on for a profit. So I took a generic one that I had laying around. But let's close this watch up. We still need a gasket, around 29.5 millimeters, a bit of silicone grease to help with the water resistance, and then closing it up with the case back. Sorry for my broken finger glove. And using the same press that we took the case back out with, and a lot of elbow grease, I could finally secure the case back in the position that it needs to be. I have to admit that I needed a lot of tries for that, because you also don't want to destroy it. It honestly is not the best case design. Nonetheless, I'm very happy with the result. And I love how the watch turned out and how it's running. I really hope this way it can catch a good price on eBay. And looking at the sides, at the polish, I think it might have a chance. The new crown fits much better in my opinion. Also, it lets the watch be operated much easier. The old crown was pretty worn off. You couldn't wind it properly anymore. Now this is easy. And the very last thing we have to do is put a leather strap on it. I reused an old made in Germany leather strap for that. Also to keep our budget down. Paying 10 euros for a new strap didn't seem right for me if we want to make a profit here. And I think this one suits the watch beautifully. Also screaming 60s, 70s. Really has to be one of my most satisfying transformations yet. What's left for me to do now is do some pictures and put it on eBay. And we can have a look what price it might fetch. And what the budget is for our next buy on our journey to treasure. And as you can see here, the watch has been sold. And to my surprise, it sold quite good, honestly. Almost 160 euros. So I prepared a little Excel sheet for the series, and you can see here, it's Tissot Seastar. We bought it for €32.50, €3 for the new crystal, and the watch has been sold for €158.88. So subtracting our buying price, this leaves us with a new budget of €123. And on top we still have another watch that we can restore and sell. So all in all, I couldn't wish for a more successful first episode. Going almost 10x on that Tissot was really unexpected. I really hope you enjoyed it, and maybe you can let me know in the comments if you're interested in me continuing the series and seeing how far we can go. For now, thank you very much for watching, and maybe see you in the next one.